we are live. Good afternoon, good afternoon, good afternoon to all of our viewers. Good afternoon to our Zoom participants. And of course, good afternoon to our FB Live and YouTube viewers. Today is Monday morning and it's another e-learning session brought to you by Ariva Academy. Our topic for this afternoon is contracts, force majeure, and the COVID-19 virus. This is Irish Malonda Samson, your host, and with me is Mr. Howell Mabalot. Good afternoon, sir, as our moderator.
Good afternoon, Miss Irish Malonda Samson. You always look beautiful.
Thank you, and same with you, Sir Howell. Kamustang weekend?
Wow. Productive yung weekend. What about you?
Productive. Of course, yes. We did exclusive webinars, of course, powered also by Ariva Academy. It is indeed blessed weekend for Ariva. Yes, and of course, please join me in welcoming our participants from out of town, and they're watching right now from Baguio, Batangas, Butuan, Cabanatuan, Cagayan de Oro, Cebu, Davao, Dumaguete, La Union, Laguna, Legazpi, Pampanga, Quezon Province, Rizal Province, Tagum City, Tarlac, Tuguegarao, and all the way from Vigan, Ilocos Sur.
Wow.
And of course, I would like to greet one of our avid follower and viewer from YouTube, Mr. Alex Arelon from Jeddah, UAE. Happy birthday, sir. Happy birthday. Okay, moving on. Of course, before I move on to our house rules, I would like to check our participants if they are ready, Sir Howell. Please get your pens and paper and let me know if you are ready. Please give me an exclamation point right now. Please type in now in the chat box exclamation point if you are ready. Yan, okay. Thank you, Emelinda, Grace. Thank you, Josephine, Maria, Melanie. Miss Melanie Canlas is here watching with us.
Wow.
Hello, Mama. We missed you. Okay. Moving on, in order for us to have a smooth flow over e-learning session, here are the following house rules. Who are the first-time viewers of our webinar? Please type in hi in the chat box now. Let us know where you're watching right now. From what company were you watching? Okay. Joy Marie Severina. Okay. Hello, ma'am. Welcome to our e-learning session. Who else? Who are the first-time viewers? And for those avid viewers of Ariva Academy, this is your second time, third time, please type in hello in the chat box right now, okay? From Fast Cargo. Okay, Aris from Emerald Incorporated. Pasita, hello, ma'am. Rowena, hello. Judith, Geraldine, and Timer. Okay, thank you. Madel Season is watching with us right now as well. Okay, let's do an audio check. Please use the following codes. Type in 111 to show if you can hear me loud and clear. 111 is Emelinda, Judith, Grace, Joel, Christian, thank you. Karen, Vanessa, thank you. 111, Pervin, Cherry Ann, thank you so much. Okay, medyo lively ang ating participants today, Sir Howell. Okay, type in 222 to show if you cannot hear anything, no sound at all. 2121 means the sound is breaking up, and question mark if you don't understand anything. But so far, it's 111. We're all loud and clear and audible. Okay, moving on. We will be having a quick break later after the presentation of our guest speaker and before we move on to our Q&A portion. Participants' microphones will be temporarily disabled by the administrator during discussion to avoid interruptions. For questions and clarifications during the provided time after each topic, please click the raise hand button for the administrator to enable the microphone for live questions. We will entertain live questions from our Zoom participants at the Q&A portion. Questions will be entertained after each topic of the session. Type in your questions at the Q&A box. Again, at the Q&A box, one question at a time will be entertained. For comments and feedbacks, please Scan this QR code. This will be directed to our feedback form. Please send us your comments, suggestions, and topics to discuss in order for us to improve our future e-learning sessions. And now to discuss contracts, force majeure, and the COVID-19 virus, Mr. Howell Mabalot, please introduce our guest speaker today.
Thank you so much, Miss Irish Malonda Samson, our dear president, for the opportunity and the privilege to introduce our speaker for today. He is a seasoned corporate and trial lawyer, a former bank lawyer with 13-year banking experience, and an extensive 15-year trial experience, handling almost all kinds of cases from criminal, civil, labor, to family law. Handled cases from trial courts up to Supreme Court. Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, let's all welcome Attorney Oliver Yuan. Hello po, Attorney. Everybody
Hi.
thank you po, Attorney.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon.
Afternoon po, Attorney. How have you been, sir?
It's okay. I'm doing good. Thank you for that introduction, Sir Howell. Ma'am Irish, good afternoon.
Thank you for saying yes to our invitation, sir.
Anytime. Okay. So, can we start?
Yes, sir. We're excited to listen to you now.
Okay. Thank you. So, again, good afternoon to all the participants. So, our topic is contracts, force majeure, and the COVID-19 virus. At this early, I would like to inform the participants
Okay, sir.
I'll be using the term force majeure and fortuitous events interchangeably. So don't be confused because essentially these two terms are the same. Okay? So this is a webinar that will answer the question whether the COVID-19 virus pandemic may be considered a force majeure or a fortuitous event to absolve a contracting party from its contractual liability. I do understand na madami ang nagtatanong if COVID-19 can be considered a force majeure. And if it is, will that absolve us from any liability? Okay, so we will answer that main question in this afternoon's webinar. So we have three objectives for this webinar. First, to inform the participants of the legal definition of a contract, mutuality of contract, requisites of a contract, the elements, the forms of contract, and its interpretation. Second, to inform the participants of the meaning of force majeure or fortuitous event and its legal effect. Okay, and lastly, again, to answer that question, whether COVID-19 virus may be considered a force majeure that could absolve us in any liability. Okay. So this is what to expect from the webinar. Participants would learn the legal meaning of all the terms that I have mentioned earlier. Okay. So we will start by defining what is a contract. Okay. This is okay. So a contract is a meeting of the minds between two persons whereby one binds himself with respect to the other to give something or to render some service. This definition is provided in Article 1305 of the Civil Code. Okay? So, this is quite inaccurate if you're going to see the meaning because it pertains to only to the meeting of the minds of two persons. We are aware that in a contract, there could be two or more persons. So to be accurate in its definition, a contract is a meeting of the minds between two or more persons, binding themselves with respect to each other to give something or to render some service. So that is the meaning of a contract. Okay? Now, what is mutuality of a contract? The contract must bind both contracting parties. Its validity or compliance cannot be left to the will of one of them. What does it mean? It simply means that if you enter into a contract, its validity and its fulfillment cannot be stipulated based on the will of only one party. So it has to be always mutual. Otherwise, there would be no meeting of the minds, as we have defined earlier. Okay? So we have a mutuality in a contract. By the way, there are three stages in making a contract. First is the conception or generation. This is the first stage wherein the parties begin their initial negotiation. Okay? The second stage is we have the perfection or the birth. This pertains to the stage wherein there is already a meeting of the minds between the parties in a contract. And the last stage is the consummation or the fulfillment of the obligation under the terms and conditions of the contract. Okay? Okay. Based on the definition, I'm sure there's a question. Is a verbal contract valid? Okay? Is a verbal contract valid, or should a contract be always written? Okay? So if we're going to go back to the legal definition, a verbal contract may be valid, but it will all depend on what kind of contract it is. Okay? So how do we know if it is valid or not? We should know the requisites or the elements of a contract. As stated in Article 1318 of the Civil Code, there are three elements: consent of the contracting parties, object certain, which is the subject matter of the contract, and the cause of the obligation. Okay? What does consent means? It refers to the meeting of the minds. Okay? In giving consent, it is important that the party giving consent must have legal capacity. Okay? That is why under the law, if you are a minor, you cannot enter into a contract because you don't have the legal capacity, and therefore you cannot give consent. Okay? In case of corporations, okay, when a corporation enters into a contract, the person representing the corporation must be authorized. He or she must have a secretary certificate or at least a board resolution authorizing that person to give consent in behalf of the corporation. Otherwise, that contract may be invalid. Okay? Object certain refers to the subject matter of the contract. Okay? And then cause of the obligation refers to the compelling reason why a party assumes an obligation to a contract. Okay? So these are the three essential elements of a contract. If these three elements are there, whether it is written or verbal, a contract is valid. Okay? Now, there's a fourth element. This refers only to real contracts, and this is delivery of the object, which refers to the transfer of possession in, let's say, in a contract of sale. Okay, it will not be valid if there will be no delivery of the object, because in a sales contract you purchase something. So whatever you purchase, you should receive it. It should be delivered to you. So that's an important element to make that contract valid. Okay. And then the question earlier, is a verbal contract valid? I said yes. However, there are certain contracts which must be in writing. Why? Because the law provides that certain contracts, we call these formal contracts, it should be in writing in order to be valid. Okay, that's clear? Now, we go to the form of contracts. Article 1356 states that contracts shall be obligatory in whatever form they may have been entered into, provided all the essential requisites for their validity are present. So remember the requisites that I have just mentioned, the three. As long as they are there, in whatever form, contract is valid. Okay. However, when the law requires a contract be in some form, in order that it may be valid or enforceable, or that a contract be proved in a certain way, that requirement is absolute and indispensable. What does that mean? Katulad nung sinabi ko kanina, although verbal contracts as a general rule is valid, there are certain types of contracts wherein it has to be in a certain form. It has to be written. So we have to comply to that form in order for that contract to be valid and enforceable. Okay? This is a sort of a review if we have participants who are law students or lawyers, or those who have taken up obligations and contracts during their college years. So you have encountered these terms. For the other participants, this is an information to give you the legal definition of these terms so that we could understand what really are contracts. Okay? Now, as I've said, informal contracts, it has to be written. What are examples of these formal contracts? We have donation of real property. Okay? Donation means there are two kinds of donation. Donation can be given by the donor during his lifetime, and there is also a donation by the donor after life or after the death of the donor. This is yung tinatawag natin, yung mga mana. So these are donations. So let's say nagmana kayo ng isang property, it must be in writing. Why? Because the law provides that it should be in writing under Article 749 of the Civil Code. So if it is not written, then it can be invalidated. So that's one example of a formal contract that should be written. Another is the donation of a personal property, the value of which is more than 5,000 pesos. Okay? So kung nagbigay ka lang ng ballpen na halagang 100 pesos, pwedeng verbal. Pero sabi ng batas, o duluma na yung batas natin, more than 5,000 pesos, personal property, pag nagbigay ka, nag-donate ka, it should be written. Okay? That's under Article 748 of the Civil Code. Sale or transfer of large cattle, it should also be in written form. Interest shall not be due unless it has been expressly stipulated in writing. Ayan. Interest. So, kailangan din nakasulat. Chattel mortgage. O, ito, yung mga nagka-car loan. So, you're familiar with chattel mortgage. Chattel mortgage must be registered in the Chattel Mortgage Registry in accordance with law. So, again, it has to be written. Negotiable instruments must be made in the required form under the negotiable instruments law. So those are example of formal contracts na kailangan siya in written form. Okay? Aside from that, it can be verbal. Okay. Meron din tayong tinatawag under the statute of frauds. These are contracts. In order naman to be enforceable, it has to be written. Okay? It has to be written. Okay. Let's move on. Article 1370, interpretation of contracts. Okay. If the terms of a contract are clear and leave no doubt upon the intention of the contracting parties, the literal meaning of its stipulation shall control. If the words appear to be contrary to the evident intention of the parties, the latter shall prevail over the former. What does it mean? When you interpret a contract, you only rely on its literal meaning. Kung ano yung nakasulat, yun na yun. As long as malinaw siya. It is not contrary to the intention of the parties. Otherwise, ang magpe-prevail kung ano talaga yung intention ng parties. Example, merong prinesenta sa inyong kontrata. Ang title, Contract of Lease. Okay? So, Contract of Lease, alam natin to. Yung mga nagre-renta, nag-uupa, Contract of Lease. When you read the contract, the body states that one party is purchasing the property stated in the contract. Okay? So there's a sale. Binebenta yung property dun sa kabilang party. And there's a purchase price. Question, what kind of contract is that? Is that a sales contract? O yung nakalagay sa title, contract of lease? What will govern? The answer is, it will be a sales contract. Bakit? Kasi yung body ng contract, yun yung intention ng parties na gusto nilang mangyari. So, they agreed on a sales transaction. It so happened lang na ang nailagay na title is contract of lease. So, what will govern, again, is the intention of the parties. It doesn't matter kung anong title pa yan. You always go to the body and look for the intention of the parties. Okay? So, now we know what a contract is. We know how to interpret it. We know the elements. So, as long as the requisites are there, it may be written, it may be oral. Okay? So, that is a contract. Okay. Now, we go to force majeure. Okay? Or sometimes we also call this fortuitous event. Okay. 1174 defines force majeure. It says, except in cases expressly specified by the law, or when it is otherwise declared by stipulation, or when the nature of the obligation requires the assumption of risk, no person shall be responsible for those events which could not be foreseen or which, though foreseen, were inevitable. Ayan. Ito yung dito interesado, I'm sure, most of the participants. Force majeure. So, malinaw, under 1174, if it cannot be foreseen, if it is a fortuitous event, then we may be free from it. Why? Because the obligation has been extinguished. You see, Article 1174 actually must be treated in related to Article 1262. 1262 says, on its first paragraph, an obligation which consists in the delivery of a determinate thing shall be extinguished if it should be lost or destroyed without the fault of the debtor and before he is incurred in delay. So, Article 1262 in relation to 1174 means that if you're the debtor, if you're the obligor in a contract, and something happened which is beyond your control, and you have not incurred in delay, your obligation extinguished or extinguishes. So, you don't have any liability. Okay. So, tatanungin nyo, attorney, so yung COVID-19, paano na yon? COVID-19 is an example of a force majeure. Why? Because it is unforeseen. It suddenly happened. It shocked the whole world. Okay? It came from Wuhan, China. Nobody knows that it will spread around the world. Okay? So it was inevitable. Nobody, as far as we know, it was not intentional. Okay? And we suffered the effects of this COVID-19. So COVID-19, since it is a pandemic, or before we use the term epidemic, it is considered a fortuitous event. So we can be absolved in our liability using the ground that we failed to fulfill our obligation because of a force majeure, which is the COVID-19 virus. However, that is the general rule. Okay. Article 1262 also, paragraph 2 states, when by law or stipulation, the obligor is liable even for fortuitous events. For the loss of the thing is not extinguished, and you shall be responsible for damages. So, the law says when by law or stipulation. Some of you who have entered into contracts, I'm sure you have encountered a provision, a force majeure provision or a fortuitous event provision in a contract. If it is stipulated, if the parties agree that despite the happening of a fortuitous event, one party would still be liable, then that will not absolve you. So it would depend. So my suggestion in entering into a contract, you must read carefully all the provisions of the contract, because some of us we only read the provisions that we are they call this we are interested. Let's say in a sales contract, we only read the provision pertaining to the price, to the object that we are buying, but sometimes we neglect some provision, just like the force majeure provision. If we do that, then we would not know whether we could be liable or not in the event of a fortuitous event. So again, it is important for us to read the entire contract and make sure that we understand each provision, especially the force majeure provision. Because hindi dekahon ang lahat ng kontrata. Etong sinasabi kong force majeure provision, iba-iba din yan. Depende yan sa agreement ng parties. Again, babalik tayo sa definition. There should be meeting of the minds, meaning both parties must agree. Okay? So, the parties may agree that in the event of a fortuitous event, nobody will be liable. Or the parties may agree in the happening of a fortuitous event, somebody would still be liable. So in any event, that provision would be legal. So depending on the agreement of the parties, depending on the contracts that they have signed. Okay? Okay. There are classes of fortuitous events as to the origin or cause and as to foreseeability. First, as to origin or cause. Fortuitous event, this refers to an event which is absolutely independent of human intervention. Ito rin yung tinatawag na naririnig nyo minsan, an act of God. Okay? An act of God. Force majeure or fuerza mayor in Spanish, this refers to an event caused by the legitimate or illegitimate acts of persons other than the obligor. In brief, in force majeure, there is human intervention.
Hi, Attorney.
Yes.
We have some feedback about the sound.
Oh,
Can you
how about that?
can you not use the earphones anymore? Is it okay po? Kasi baka doon nagagaling yung static. If you can just pull out the
I'll pull out the
headset.
sige, let's try.
Let's try, sir.
Okay?
Yan! Mas malinaw, attorney.
Linaw. Okay, thank you.
Thank you,
Okay.
sir. Opo.
Okay. So, again, going back, fortuitous event and force majeure, as I have said earlier, these are interchangeable terms. Essentially, they are the same. Okay? They are the same. The other class of fortuitous event is as to foreseeability. There is what we call ordinary fortuitous event and an extraordinary fortuitous event. Okay, ordinary, these are events which ordinarily happen or which could be reasonably foreseen but are inevitable. Example, flooding of low-lying areas during typhoons and thunderstorm. O dito sa Metro Manila, pag biglang bumuhos yung ulan, there are certain areas na bigla na lang bumabaha. So it is considered as an ordinary fortuitous event. It can be foreseen pero inevitable kasi walang ginagawa ang ating gobyerno, unfortunately. Okay? Kaya even if alam na natin mangyayari yon, since walang ginagawa, it becomes inevitable. Okay? Extraordinary fortuitous event naman, those which do not usually happen and could not be reasonably foreseen. Okay? Earthquake, fire, war, COVID-19. This is considered as an extraordinary fortuitous event. Ito, wala na talaga tayong magagawa. Okay, we really do not expect this, but sometimes it happens. Okay, so those are the two classes of fortuitous events. So on the question again, is COVID-19 a fortuitous event or a force majeure? The answer is yes. Okay. Now, automatic ba na exempted tayo if there is force majeure or fortuitous event? Here are the requisites to exempt an obligor from liability by reason of fortuitous event. Okay, first, the cause of the breach must be independent of the debtor's will. Dapat wala kang kinalaman doon sa fortuitous event, hindi ikaw ang may kagagawan. The event must either be unforeseeable or unavoidable. Sabi nga natin minsan, no choice. Andyan na, nangyari. Third, the event must be such as to render it impossible for the debtor to fulfill his obligation in a normal manner. Okay, so gustuhin man niya na gawin yung obligation niya sa kontrata, pero he cannot simply do it. Okay? The debtor must be free from any participation, aggravation of the injury to the creditor. So, these are the requisites. Pag andyan yan, then a person can be exempt from liability by reason of fortuitous event. Exceptions, which make an obligor unliable. Okay? Katulad ng sinabi ko kanina, it would depend. So, first, when it is expressly stipulated that he shall be liable, even in the happening of a fortuitous event, under Article 1174 yan. So, kung nakalagay sa kontrata na liable ka pa rin in the happening of a force majeure or a fortuitous event, then sorry, you will still be liable. Hindi mo pwede sabihin, hindi ko naman kasalanan yan, hindi ko ginusto yan, hindi ako may kagagawa niyan, pero since it was expressly stipulated in your contract, then you should still be liable. Okay? When the nature of the obligation requires the assumption of risk. Okay? When the obligor is in delay. Eto. Nagkaroon tayo ng ECQ. Okay? Let's say you are into a contract. And doon sa contract na yon, kailangan mong magbayad. Let's say on a staggered basis. Before pa magsimula yung ating lockdown or yung ECQ, hindi ka na nakakabayad. Okay? Hindi ka na nakakabayad before pa mangyari yung ECQ. And then nag-ECQ. After ECQ, sabi mo, dapat exempted ako. Kasi hindi ko naman kasalanan, nag-lockdown eh. Tama ba yung katwiran na yon? No. Kasi, katulad nung letter C, when the obligor is in delay, hindi siya exempted. Kasi before pa mangyari, yung kino-consider nating fortuitous event or force majeure, may delay na siya. So, he or she will still be liable. It's a different matter kung let's say, consistently, religiously nagbabayad ka in accordance to sa kontrata nyo. And then nag-lockdown. Then during the lockdown, hindi ka na makabayad. Then hindi mo to kasalanan. It is a fortuitous event and you have not incurred in delay. Hindi ka lang nakabayad during the happening of the fortuitous event. So in that case, you can be exempted. Okay? And the last, when the obligor has promised the same thing to two or more persons who do not have the same interest. Is our logic still good? Okay. Now, these are other exceptions. When the possessor is in bad faith and the thing is deteriorated due to fortuitous event, or when the obligor contributed to the loss of the thing, and when the obligor is guilty of fraud, negligence, again, delay. Okay. The last two, this is in accordance with the decision of the Supreme Court. Okay, all decisions of the Supreme Court forms part of the law of the land, so it is also a law that we must follow. Okay. Yeah. Ito, I'm sure maraming question tungkol dito. Bayanihan to heal as one act. Okay. Bakit ko sinama to dito sa webinar natin this afternoon? Because there are two kinds of contracts mentioned in the Bayanihan to heal as one act. One is the contract of lease. The other one is the contract of loan. Okay. What does the law tells us? In the Bayanihan Act, we are given, if we are into a contract of lease or a contract of loan, we are given a 30 days grace period in order to pay our outstanding due, our monthly amortization, our monthly rent. Okay. Without incurring additional interest, penalties, and other fees. Okay. Ang question dyan, ito madalas tinatanong sa akin. Attorney, hindi ako nakabayad ng renta ko for March, April, and May. Kasi during those times, naka-lockdown na tayo. Okay. Ano epekto sa akin itong Bayanihan to Heal as One Act? For the contract of lease, we are given a 30 days grace period para bayaran. The question is, attorney, babayaran ko ba yung 3 buwan sabay-sabay? O pwede ko siya bayaran staggered? Okay? The answer is, kung pagbabasihan natin itong Bayanihan to Heal as One Act, kailangan after the 30 days grace period, you have to pay it in full. Kasi walang nakalagay doon sa implementing rules and regulation of this law na pwede tayong magbayad ng staggered. So, anong gagawin natin? Well, pakiusapan na lang natin yung ating landlord kung pwedeng i-staggered yung payment. But kung tatanungin natin yung sinasabi ng batas, then no choice tayo but to pay it in full after the 30 days grace period. Ang pinayagan lang sa Bayanihan to Heal as One Act na bayaran on a staggered basis are the accrued interest. This refers to the contract of loan. Diba, pag may loan tayo, meron tayong binabayarang principal, meron tayong interest. Okay? So pagdating naman sa loan, ganun din. Hindi mo muna babayaran for 30 days. After 30 days, you have to pay it in full when it comes to the principal. Kasi ang nakalagay sa Bayanihan Act, ang pwede mo lang bayaran on a staggered basis is the accrued interest. Okay? Nakakainis ano, pero yan talaga yung yan yung sinasabi ng batas. Mukhang medyo may kulang as far as I'm concerned. May kulang doon sa batas. Hindi na anticipate ng ating mga congressmen and senators na during the lockdown, binigyan nga tayo ng 30 days grace period pero nakalimutan nila isipin na hindi rin tayo kumita during the lockdown. So saan natin kukunin ngayon yung pambabayad natin after the 30 days grace period? So kailangan i-amend tong, I heard there's a Bayanihan Act 2.
Yes.
So kung magkakaroon man, sana i-correct nila to para naman at least maka-cope up yung mga tao na naipon yung babayaran. But again, let me clarify, insofar as Bayanihan to Heal as One Act, after the 30 days grace period, we need to pay the principal in full. Accrued interest, we can pay it on a staggered basis. Now, it's different if yung nagpautang sa inyo o yung landlord niyo will tell you, sige, staggered natin to. Then, we don't have a problem. Okay? So, thank you. So, that concludes my presentation. It's quite a short presentation, so I'm sure there are many questions.
Yes. Thank you so much, Attorney Oliver Yuan. Palakpakan naman natin si Attorney Oliver Yuan.
Thank you.
Grabe, maiksi yung presentation, pero it's meaty and it's relevant. It's very timely. In fact, Attorney, I just last week, I settled all my utility bills. Si PLDT, I had to pay in full unless I'm willing to fall in line sa PLDT branch nila. Pero si Meralco, July 15 pa siya.
Yeah.
And then divided by, I'm not sure if it's 3 or 4 or 6 months. But the good thing about Smart is, kasi nga maganda yung queuing nila dito, they divided the entire amount to 6. So it was easy for me and for us Filipino people to do that.
Yeah.
And we also heard of nag-trending to, nag-viral na yung landlord or landlady who's in Italy, in Batangas, yung nasa Batangas yung mga units niya for rent. And then yung for 3 months, libre lahat ng nakatira. So I think apart from the law, what we can do and extend to our fellow men is yung empathy. Di po ba, Attorney?
Agree.
Maawa na lang tayo, mahabag na lang tayo.
Yes,
And at the same time, ang huli kong pinuntahan, Attorney, yung isang bangko, kasi nga I have another condo unit na binabayaran ko. They gave me a choice. Sabi nila, Sir Howell, gusto mo ba na bayaran itong 3 months? Or if you want, you just pay the interest for 3 months. And what we will do, you will start paying in full yung July. And what will happen is, let's just say the contract is 10 years. The contract will be 10 years plus 3 months.
Yes.
So sobrang gaan lang, nakaraos. So walang takot, walang magsasara, walang demand letter. So I think those kinds of banks and the owners of these utility services who are really empathic of the Filipino people. I'm sure, Attorney, sa pagbabalik natin, marami in fact, ngayon may 4 na tayong questions eh. So for those of you who are viewing us via Zoom, ayan. So type in your question at the Q&A box. For those of you who are watching via YouTube live stream, you can comment on the comment box, write your comment there, and then it will be forwarded to me by Sir Jeff, our technical director, and of course, Ms. Irish Malonda, our president. Don't you go away. We'll be right back. We promise.
Thank you.